Everyone, welcome. This is the GTM AI podcast, episode number 20 with Joey Brodsky, who is the head of GTM Search for Stott and May. He is also the host of the GTM Kickback podcast. Today, we dive into AI and GTM hiring, job searching, and recruiting. This is sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, your go-to source for learning how to use AI in companies, teams, and in your individual workflow. Business impact over learning tools.
Welcome, everybody. This is Coach K. I am here. We're doing a little bit different version of the podcast today. So this is going to be a duo show. So this is a GTM AI podcast and duoing as the GTM Kickback show, which I'll let you introduce. But first off, Joey, so good to have you. You are the current head of GTM Search for Stott and May, and you also are the host of the GTM Kickback show. I've never done this before, so we're going to try out this double interview session. So over to you,
you're beating me. You've got this awesome logo behind you, and I've got mine taped up on the wall on a piece of copy stock.
I don't know if I have this lovely, beautiful, unfinished basement / my office that is not as pretty. It's all good.
Yeah, we got connected for context just through, I guess, a myriad of mutuals on LinkedIn, right? And obviously seeing that we run similar endeavors when it comes to producing some content for the go-to-market folks out there looking to elevate their careers and their practice and their businesses. The go-to-market kickback, I like to call it the #1 go-to-market leadership interview and strategy podcast in the world. We are the only one in that very nuanced category, but it makes us the #1.
That's okay. #1. I like it.
I'm excited to have this conversation. Hopefully give some insights that's a little bit different from some of your other conversations, more on the recruitment front of how organizations and sales leaders are qualifying people's skills differently with the advent of AI being so prolific in the way they're changing their go-to-market motions. And it's caused some changes in the metrics that they're looking at, the technologies people are using, and the way that they're communicating with their buyers to be more effective at their selling programs. And then obviously how they're actually building their sales organizations and marketing organizations structurally, which, I mean, no surprise to anyone, they're leaner and meaner and more efficient for good reason. So excited to share some of that. That's hopefully helpful for the folks out there.
Yeah, man. I love it. I'm gonna kick it off. I'm gonna ask you the first question. We were talking about this before, but I was in this group of people, consultants, who were talking about this kind of stuff. And one of them brought up the fact, as a result of some automation AI, he was proclaiming that one of the new positions out there is going to be the C-suite of everything. Because like you have all these tools that can do a lot of the piddly-do stuff that would have required a human before. So I'm now curious, from your lens as a recruiter for all things GTM, do you see things, more roles being more and more combined, or doing something to where it is like more streamlined, more lean? What are you seeing on that end?
Yeah, I can see the trend moving towards that, right?
Yeah.
Right now, I think on the broad scale, it's probably at an immature part in that motion, right? Where people are still very slowly and skeptically adopting AI tools into their actual selling motions, right? Whether that's from a content production standpoint, or research and customer profiling standpoint, to an actual forecast and pipeline predictability standpoint, which is naturally blurring the lines between some roles that are traditionally very segmented in go-to-market organizations. Like, I mean, the simplest thing is marketing and sales responsibilities are much more blurred now, and salespeople are not just encouraged, but expected, right, to take some of that load that's traditionally dedicated towards the marketing persons, right? Whether it's content for decks or social media selling or any sort of product marketing materials from a simple standpoint that can help advance their sales cycles a little bit quicker and more swiftly, and educate their buyers before they ever even need to educate their buyers or know that they're buyers in a lot of cases as well. So there's some blurring of the lines that's happening between sales, marketing, and customer success, where I don't see it as a combination of roles just yet, but more of a unification, right? Where those teams have to work so much more closely together in terms of their output, and are much more aligned to the right goals of revenue production and client acquisition than they've probably ever been, because of the advent of all these technologies and how everyone can be useful with it.
What I found interesting with AI is it's forcing me, at least, to be more human, because I have to communicate better to the AI and others. And because the results of this, the market in general clamping down on things, you have to make sure the customer experience is that much better, which forces the teams to make sure that each touch point is aligned and we're communicating internally and we know what the heck's going on, which AI is like a perfect complement to be able to help with that. Super interesting. But do you feel like you had mentioned this before around skills with AI in general and go-to-market leadership. I'm curious, like from the leadership standpoint, not the individual contributor, but more the leader side, what skills are teams looking for that someone who is a VP level or whatever, or higher, has around AI specifically, whether it's ChatGPT or any other tool?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's about specific tools, right, that people need to have experience in using, right? There has to be obviously a baseline of maturity and understanding generative AI tools and predictive AI tools at least a base level to understand the ROI and impact they can have on their businesses, particularly at a very early stage. And that's where we specialize in, right? To set the stage a little bit. Everything I've done for almost the last decade is exclusively placing senior executives and high level individual contributors with very early stage startups, right, that are generally building their go-to-market motions from the ground up. First time head of sales, first time CRO as they hit a revenue benchmark, and the first 5 or 10 sales reps that are coming into that, right? And selling usually a very novel product, right, that needs every push that it can get to market and resonate with people that have never bought anything like it before. I think maybe talking about it chronologically and how it's changing the recruitment process is probably a good way to start answering that question, if you don't mind me going roundabout here. It's categorically changing, I can tell you, from a recruitment perspective, and trying to source and court these people on a daily basis, how people are found and the skills that people are looking for, strictly from a search standpoint, that are getting highlighted in their profiles, their resumes, their background, their qualifications, right? Where it's much more nuanced, because it can be nuanced at a larger scale by using AI, by looking for specific skills, looking for someone that has experience in a specific stage or revenue journey of an organization, or a particular venture round that usually is indicative of that same thing, right? And the qualifications that they're looking for to match alignments, right? And there's so much more intelligence into defining your ideal candidate profile, right? And utilizing big data systems and AI to understand who has been successful in your organization and what parts of their success do we want to replicate in finding the next person, right? Usually it's stage alignment, it's ability to sell in a specific industry segment, it's going through a similar size and time scale of sales process, or a myriad of different things depending on the product they're going to market with, how early or late stage the company is, and who they're actually selling it to at the end of the day. And that's up to each company to decide and stack rank which ones of those things are most important. But the cool thing is they pretty much have the endless ability to define that criteria much more easily based on real data sets, and then go out to the market and source people that could be appropriate fits based on that, to have higher conversion rates and higher success rates in the reps that they're actually talking to, which for a sales leader or a rep, right? It just means you have to be so much more intentional about how you're portraying yourself out in the market, right? And aligning the right skills for the job that you want that's next, or looking for things that are in the right stage, sector, and product alignment, right? To make sure that you're going to be a quality fit in the eyes of that organization and find something that's a mutual benefit to them. And it's dramatically changing the way that people are actually getting interviewed and judged and qualified in that sort of process. I think the biggest thing that AI has changed, and it's been a natural progression over all my years of doing go-to-market search, is people that can be hyper scientific in the way that they sell, an exponential curve that is like very close to being straight upwards and downwards right now because of AI. They want people that are hyper focused on using methodologies in their sales organizations, and then using AI or other types of derivative research and design tools, right, from a sales search capacity to help enhance the way that they're running those scientific motions, whether it's MEDDIC or MEDPIC or Sandler, whatever, and create better conversion rates at every single step of that process, and using those metrics to align who has had categorical experience in doing that and is showing a natural trend of using technology to optimize and humanize, like you said, the experience of who they're selling to.
I've wondered a lot around just how more and more companies are leveraging AI in their own product set and an inherent part of what they do. It requires a certain knowledge base and a talk track to be able to talk about AI when you've never talked about it before. Do you feel like number one, do you see more startups are more AI native or AI inherent, something like that, that are requiring that kind of knowledge or at least ability or experience from people from AI point of view, or not as much?
Some of the become like very AI organizations that are
Yeah.
literally selling horizontal AI applications, right? That is their value proposition, that they can bring some data and research and AI element to some other constructive element of their customers' system usage or whatever it is, right? Like they tend to have a greater importance on someone that sold something that's focused on data science or AI in the past, but it's so new that there's not much of a track record of people ever selling that stuff in the first place, right? You can't find it because it's just started. You're the first person that's selling something new, right? It's a challenge that's been around for years, right? Companies that are selling novel products and looking for sales reps that have experience selling what they've sold before. And I go to them like, you just came up with this and you're telling me you are leading the market, right? And innovation and designing your software, right? And you're the first of your kind or best in breed. Like, how do you expect someone to have that same experience if they haven't worked for you before and you're 2 years old? Before. So that's funny. You're naturally looking for derivatives in that. There's so many more vertical pointed AI software solutions out there right now than the horizontal ones, right? Just because the scale of those can go so much larger. And for the vertical ones, they could be very narrow, very deep, and have a bigger impact on a specific industry or buyer persona. So I think the things that they look for are people that have experience in selling novel products of any kind, right? Have at least a decent capacity to understand sort of data-driven tools and can at least personally see the resonance with that and be able to communicate that effectively, right? And you find that out through behavioral interviews and putting them through case studies and getting them to talk to you, right? And pitch certain things that they've never sold before or pitch anything at all, right? And just understand their ability to comprehend that, right? As an intellectual person. But then it's still focusing on a lot of the same things, but more narrow and more deeply, right? The industry segment experience, the stage alignment experience, the experience selling to a specific buyer persona or something of that kind to compound with the intellectual capability that you do a sniff check on and have a qualitative type assessment to see if they can sell something as novel as some modern verticalized AI product in a new field.
So I've got to ask you before I kick back over to you to ask some questions. I have a bunch of friends who are looking from individual contributors to VP levels looking for work. And since you're looking for search, I have people tell me how they leverage AI for resumes and then on the other side, you have AI reviewing resumes to see who goes through or not. I'm curious from your lens of the job search function itself. Do you think we'll get to the point where AI is, and I don't know this because I'm not on your seat, but is it accurate now? Does it help you? Like, tell me how AI is used for your function.
That's a really good question. It's great and it's absolutely terrible at the same time, right? When you get hundreds of inbound applications and the resumes look all exactly the same. The cover letter has the exact same wording. The ChatGPT just spit it out with a name change and an industry change for a specific person, a specific job. It almost shows more of a laziness and lack of diligence when you're using it from a communication standpoint, right? That actually is hurting a lot of candidates more than it's helping them. I think from
even though the job description says ChatGPT skills required.
basically, but they don't want you to use it for this one.
But don't use it for this, okay? Yeah.
It's a natural thing where you need to stand out amongst a very competitive job market out there right now.
So being human will help you stand out, is what you're saying.
Being very human, and authentic. When it's so easy for everyone else to do that exact same thing, it really doesn't become differentiated by any means, right? And it genuinely shows almost a lack of care and intentionality to the process of things are being mass sent out and mass applied to, and not much constructive work is being put into like your application process and your simple email to the hiring manager that says, hey, I saw your job. I think it'd be a great fit for X, Y, and Z, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. And that's the problem with some of these generative AI solutions, the big commercial ones, is like the output is so much the same. People aren't doing the things that everyone says they should be doing, like using that as a guideline and a skeleton or framework, and then adding the human elements to it just because they rather lean into the volume of it and hope that it works out. But it's causing a lot of lack of intentionality from the recruitment side. I think it'll be a very long time, and to be honest, hopefully never, that we use it from a qualification standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Because AI has natural biases. Certain skills are very transferable that technology doesn't understand are transferable to specific job requirements. And it runs the risk of leading towards a world that rolls back on a lot of the diversity initiatives that have been put in place for good reasons and good measures over the last number of years, as it's become increasingly important for both diversity of backgrounds and thoughts and all other things included in that, right? And it's going to disqualify a lot of really great people by reducing them to dollars and cents and black and white squiggles on a piece of paper and taking away that human element and experience to it. I think it's great from a top line research and development standpoint for recruiters out there. And I use it like that all the time, right? If I've got a very specific requirement for a CRO in industry segmentation, say it's cyber or data security and encryption, right? I can go into some sort of chatbot and ask it to give me all of the relevant competitors of an organization to ease the burden of it. But it has to be a tool that you use to enhance what you've already been doing, right? Not a replacement to it at all, because it runs some severe risks, right? Of being able to capture the best talent that's out there on the market and some really quality people that the machine says is not right for whatever variables that it thinks they're not right for.
You ever see a world where I'll send my avatar version of myself to an interview, and it interviews another avatar, and see how it goes?
I posted on this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two ago, about some company that was, I won't out them, but you can probably find on my LinkedIn, that was doing AI avatar interviews. So you submit your application and you don't send your avatar in, but your first interview is going to be with a virtual avatar. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions and qualify you for the job. And I'm like, if I were a candidate going forward to a job that I thought was really interesting, and I put all this time, hopefully didn't just use ChatGPT to write a cover letter and resume and send some nice outreach to this company, and then I'm talking to a robot for my first qualification call, and then I'm like, I would be pissed off, man. I'd be like, what the hell? We work to work with people and to provide benefit to people at the end of the day. Every job does that in some sort of shape or fashion down the value chain there. And I'm like, it takes the fun out of it in a lot of ways too. Like, we all like to enjoy our jobs and have fun doing it. We're not just robotic productivity machines for organizations. I just really think it runs the risk of missing so many critical human nuances to the inflection in your voice, the way you make small talk with someone, like especially for sales, the way you give the tit and tat in a conversation, the slight level of adherence and combativeness that a salesperson is going to want out of you. There's just so many qualitative features that cannot be boiled down to numbers and quantifiable output are just going to get missed with that. So I don't know if that's going to be the world, but I very much hope not, because it's going to be deconstructive in a lot of ways if it goes that route.
Yeah, I've actually thought about, with recruiting specifically, I was like, what would be cool? What I'd like to have, at least right now in general, when I go through a job process and get a general denial letter or something like that, what would be cool is if you had some sort of AI tech that gave an easy ability for the recruiter or interviewer to give feedback. And then after whatever panel of interviews, that feedback gets given back to the person, so they actually have something to take from it. But it also gives feedback to the team saying, here's all the legitimate reasons why we picked this person, because they fit all whatever criteria it might be. Because what drives, I know, most people crazy, and I don't know if you hear this, but I do, of like when you spend all this time and energy, they say, sorry, when somebody else, or you get this broad general email saying, thanks for applying, good luck. And you're like, after 10 interviews, that's what you tell me is thank you, appreciate it. So like any AI that can help with that aspect, I think it'd be killer. But
I think to put a cap on it, like it's probably very similar to what you're seeing in the sales enablement and just the broader sales landscape and SaaS, right? Like, we want to use AI to enhance the human parts of our process and eliminate the mundane tasks that can be driven exclusively by technology, so we can spend more time on the human elements and the conversations and the real fit and matchmaking that we're trying to do, right? It's going to help the candidate and potential employee of that company and the company grow to whatever key performance-based metrics that they want to hit over a certain time scale, whether that's sourcing or maybe some of the messaging and automation outbound and some of the information gathering piece. Great. But nothing can eliminate that true human contextual conversation, right? That has to be done, right? To really get to know someone and understand their fit on such a broad range of variables that are at many times indescribable. So many people hire and rightly off of gut feelings. And gut feelings are usually the best metric for success. A good sales leader has a gut feeling about a rep when they interview them, or a CEO has generally a good gut feeling about a new revenue leader that they're going to bring into that organization. They take a bet on it, and they have a natural degree of risk associated with that. And they do that equation in their head. Okay, like I feel this strongly about this person, and here are the potential outcomes, and that's good enough for me to take the bet on it. And you would just miss so much of that by completely driving AI to the human component of it. So I sound like I'm dissing AI right now. I think it's a wonderful tool, and hopefully it enhances that matchmaking process and allows everyone to have more human-led conversations and get more good feedback and truly understand people in a more meaningful way by giving them the means to talk to people in a broader range of better fits, and then focus more on the human element of it. So I do think it's greatly enhancing the work that we're doing, and is going to greatly enhance the returns that people get on salespeople and the salespeople's returns on the companies that they join by just being a better fit where they can sell better and enjoy their jobs better and stay there longer. You can't have one without both.
What's interesting about what you said about the gut instinct, which I agree with you, by the way. I had a professor in my HR class for MBA who told us that he thought that interviews were the biggest waste of time because according to the data, interviews didn't show any uptick in length of time someone stayed or best fit for the job or whatever. I was like, I don't know if I'd ever be okay with just a survey-led interview process you hired someone with, or AI-led thing, and then they just come in one day and you've never talked to them before ever. I'm like, until AI is working with AI and it's not AIs with humans or something, like there's got to be that trust, which I think is the crux of most AI tools, is can you trust it? I don't know any CFO who would say, let's do our quarterly financial report totally with AI and I won't even look at it. No CFO, as far as I know, is willing to do that yet, you know?
Yeah. So maybe it gets there one day, but I think sales will be the last one on the chopping block because you're literally being hired to communicate with people and bring human experiences. So you can't really get there without having that human experience. But yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. Your turn. I'll swing it back to you.
Tell me how you're seeing this impact the actual sales enablement space where you've got so much pedigree on. Like we talked about it slightly earlier, that role and skill set, whether it comes in the form of advisory and consulting work like you're doing or a proper full-time resource, it's becoming much more prolific. It's a big word for me. And it's coming into play much earlier on in a company's growth cycle than we've seen in the past. And that seems to be accelerating. Tell me if you think that's accurate and how is AI helping it get there?
I'll talk about enablement more generally than just sales because I'm a very passionate proponent of enablement being across customer-facing org, but it's the same function just for everybody. There seems to be, this is a two-sided coin, which is one reason why I started this whole thing in the first place, is that I see a future where someone in an organization is going to be in charge of not the technical backend, that's more of kind of IT people or AI actual builders of AI, but there's going to be someone on the front end who's teaching people on the user experience of how do you leverage this in your specific roles or for your teams or for whatever. And since enablement is already that team who does tool enablement or adoption or change management already, to me, I'm like, there's a logical line between AI enablement and sales revenue enablement right now. The challenge is that as a whole, I don't think the enablement people as a whole, at least from my experience, are adopting it as fast as they should. And if we keep going the way we're going, they're going to be replaced by somebody else who's willing to do the work.
Yeah.
As far as the enablement function specifically, if I could bucket it into, you have training and coaching to onboarding, content, performance improvements, you have the competency models, you have all these different things around, but it boils down to performance improvement or change management. And then giving people what they need when they need it. AI is going to be all over that because, for example, if I have a new rep who's on a phone call, I can't be on every single phone call to back them up. Neither can their manager. But AI can understand the context of what's going on and pop up little reminders or questions or whatever during a call, or they can use the AI to manually search it to where they can have that. My job as an enabler is to make sure that AI is intelligent enough or trained enough, quote unquote, to give them what they need in the moment they need it so they can be successful. You know, the other side is like with feedback. Most people have some sort of gong or a chorus or some functionality like that. I don't know of anybody who actually has the time to review every single call going through, because there's hundreds of calls and no one ever looks at it. And
Yep.
what they give you as far as the tracking ability is based on the words, but not the context. So like the words alone are not enough to tell you if something's being adopted enough. But if you had an AI be able to automatically review every single call and give you a score on every single call, and then give that to a rep real time, and then also take that feedback from the last call, bring it up before your next call and say, hey, remember this last call, you need to work on this skill this next time. I can't do that. So
Yep.
I see enablement shifting to where it's going to be the, I guess you could say like a systems admin, but like the person overseeing the enablement function. But it's not me. The human's no longer the person doing the enablement or coaching. It's me overseeing an AI that's doing it for them real time when they need it. Does that make sense? It's a shift in how we view what enablement's actually doing or not. So yeah. And there's all that's the future world right now. A big problem I see in enablement in general, sorry, I'm going to ramble for a second, is that some people equate enablement to just training or to just content creation or just these things. And I'm like, if that's all you think, we are definitely going to be replaced by AI. But we're not that. We're higher, we're bigger, we're more strategic in that. And when you look at it from that lens, then AI is definitely a complement instead of a replacement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Well, we talked about that really quickly earlier on too, before we
yeah.
started recording, is the elevation of that role inside of early stage software businesses, where I'm sure you are, and many others that I've spoken with are proponent of that being a critical role that's a first or second right-hand man or woman to the CRO or whoever's leading revenue for that organization. Like, how are you seeing that trend, and what's critical to understand for someone that's not a proponent of that yet to understand why that is going to be beneficial to them?
I think when people are critical of that thought is usually because they've experienced enablement as a different, more reactive firefighting type of role. And not that's bad, but enablement's one of these weird, I shouldn't say weird, interesting worlds where there's no what good looks like. There's no standard of what it actually looks like. So it's really a lot of people's opinions. And sadly, a lot of people's opinions are not very good. And I could say that because when I first started enablement, I had no idea what I was doing. I love training, I love coaching, but as far as enablement, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I know that was me at one time, but I've learned through experience how to shift those gears and to change it. So to think about it differently, they'd have to understand what it actually is or what it actually could be, and how, because if you take any initiative, whether it's AI, onboarding, selling a new product, whatever it is, the skill component or knowledge component, or actually adopting or executing on it, is the biggest, hardest piece to do. And yet it's always looked at as sometimes the last thing to do. But if you're not executing on things, any idea, any product is crap. It doesn't do anything. And that's what enablement in my mind is supposed to be about, is about the execution and actual adoption of whatever it is you're trying to do, because that's where the magic happens. But sadly, and again, I will blame myself because I've been in the spot before I've tried to fix this, is that the enablers aren't connecting the dots and then become a barrier to adoption execution because they're trying fancy ways to make it fun or whatever, instead of actually making it applicable to someone's life, whether that's sales or CS or whoever that might be. And again, I say that because I was that person, so I'll critique myself. Yeah.
What would you advise someone in a very early stage software business that wants to hire an enablement role, or at least bring you in, even as a fractional capacity for the first time? What projects and initiatives are first to do, right, to find the best ROI out of investing in that sort of program or resource?
Yeah, I always do some sort of gap analysis and figure out where in the heck are you at, because it's really hard. I benchmark everything I can find. Sometimes some startups don't have really good data, so it's just trying to help them identify what data actually start tracking and benchmark it. But it's also identify just the gap. One of the places I consult for is called the Sales Velocity Labs. And so we use the metric of sales velocity and understand from pipeline, from individuals to teams. We look at sales velocity metric for each one of those sources and just see where are you at, and then compare that to where do you want to go. If you're at 2 million now, you want to go to 4 million. If you're at 10, you want to go to 20. If you're wherever you're at, the sales velocity metric has to change. So the question is, what do we think is actually realistic, and what levers can enablement shift to make that happen? Because sometimes it's, let's just raise our prices by 20% and then sales velocity goes up. Nothing to do with enablement. It's just throwing more money at marketing, or it's adding a new product. Like, there's things you can do to impact it. But the question I have as enablement is, what can I do in enablement to shift this specific thing. And then I look proactively forward. So one thing I talk about with enablement is that a lot of times people look at results, they say, we did that, and no one believes them because everyone wants to say any good result was there, was because of them. Instead, I think we should look forward like an investment and saying, okay, if you're investing in me as a fractional person, we're going to look at this particular metric, this thing, and we're going to project forward. This is what you're going to get, which therefore will get you this ROI forward. When this shifts, it's because of what we're doing with enablement that it's happening. It's not by happenstance. Like it's planned from the start to have this result.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And that's the difference, because most people do more of, they bring enablement in, they say, we need a discovery training, and we need this process up, we need this whatever thing, we need 5,000 decks, whatever. And then enablement becomes this reactive support fulfillment center that then gets cut a year later because they're like, what do we have you for? Because it's not as critical as it could be. And they think they can do without it. And it's funny how many times I've heard of a company hiring enablement, letting go of enablement, and hiring them back because they go, oh, we need that. Even if it's reactive, they still need something. I hope that answers your original question. But
and maybe to cap it off, are there specific tools or tactics that someone can implement today to even upstart like a bit of enablement in their organization? Not to say that they're hiring a full-time resource to do that, that can give the biggest gains the earliest on. Are you a proponent of a specific software or a certain type of tool that drives the biggest impact very early?
It's a good question, because I don't know if I could say a tool, but I will say a couple of concepts. One would be, worst case scenario, if you use like a Google Doc or something, documenting things. The biggest thing I find with most startups, or at least early go-to-market teams, is that the brilliance of founders is lost in their brains and it's never written down. And the magic that they have needs to be documented. So the earlier and the faster you can document their thoughts, the better someone can adopt it. That's number one. Number two, founders or earlier people need to understand your AEs or new people cannot sell like you. You've got to give them a break. They're not founders. They don't have the authority. They don't have the experience. And you can't expect them to sell like you. So you've got to be willing to help them in the way they can sell as an AE, not as a founder. And then three is identifying what good looks like, even if it's as good as we got right now. Because most people, when they come into an org, like I just literally talked to someone this morning who became an AE from an SDR at a startup, who he was saying to me, I know how to do the first 3 stages. After stage 3, I have no idea how to get someone across the finish line to close them, because I've never been told, I've never been shown, and I'm just winging it, which is like the worst case to be, because that's a bad customer experience and it's not good for him, doesn't build his confidence.
Happens a lot. Yeah.
It happens a lot. So identifying what good looks like, even if that's as much as saying, I know what I'm going to show you is a 4 out of 10, but it's the best I got. At least it's something. So then someone can see it and they can iterate on and improve on it. But it's hard to iterate when you're trying to create it in the first place. That's one reason why I like AI, is because you can create something and then iterate and build off of it. And you don't have the blank page problem. When you have a blank page problem as a salesperson trying to walk someone through a sales process, it's a nightmare because you have no idea what you're doing. So those 3 things is just understanding, getting any knowledge you out, document it as much as you can, giving people a break when they're not founders. And then 3 is identifying what does good look like, at least right now, and then improving on it as you go. If you do those 3 things, that enablement will cover a lot of what I see missing most of the time.
I think we just solved a lot of people's problems. Hopefully.
Hopefully. You tell me, does this sound familiar? What do you think? You consult founders. What do you think of that?
I agree, man. Some of them are aimless on this, right? And they don't even know the direction of the target they're moving towards. I think bringing in someone like yourself in an advisory capacity is exceptionally important, and probably not prolific enough, to use that word again, right? That would have a big impact on just getting people conceptually to understand why this sort of program is important and why they should do it earlier than not, instead of waiting for a mess to happen and being reactive in it later on. But yeah, it's interesting. And this whole AI driving human experiences, I think that's the major tone from both angles here is, I'm sure you say this in every conversation, like it needs to be an enhancement of the human experience that all these people are going through, whether it's recruitment, whether it's direct sales, whether it's sales enablement or some sort of data analysis. So we can serve customers better at the end of the day. And there's some risks to it that you have to be conscious of around communication and not being able to stand out in a world that is getting noisier and noisier because of the same vehicle, right? If you can be conscious of those and use it in a more tactical and scientific way to enhance the things that you're already doing, like hopefully there will be some really great green shoots for some people that can really propel their careers and their ability to sell and their ability to scale their whole organization from a revenue standpoint.
Yeah, I always tell people with AI specifically is that the two most critical skills, in my opinion, are going to be critical thinking, or the editor's mind, and creative thinking with AI. Because the more creative you can be, but also the more critical, because anytime I get a result from AI, I am really critical of it. And I've become more critical because AI is not, it's just, it doesn't know. It's taking tokens and trying to predict what next token comes up and give you the best answer based on what it knows in its training. It doesn't know. Yeah. So you have to critique it. But the magic comes in when you have, if you have two people, one's a brand new person out of college, no experience whatsoever, but they know AI. And you have another person who's experienced 10 years down the road, but no AI experience, both of them will struggle because this person doesn't know what good looks like. And this person doesn't know what AI looks like, and they can't speed it up. But we combine them and you can teach someone, okay, this is what good looks like. And that's what experience usually teaches you. And you can drive AI to get you to that point. You can get there fast, really quick, but it takes that critical mindset to where you can help get at that point. Or as a person who's brand new out of college, you could probably make someone really dangerous with AI without having any experience, just if they knew how to prompt it. But they still, if I asked a new person in enablement to build me an onboarding program, they could do it in AI, but they would have no idea if it was good or not because they've never actually put it into practice. So for anyone listening out there, if you have experience, you're not in AI, I think learning it and getting involved with your process will only make you better and faster because you already know what good looks like, hopefully. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah. And that's what people are looking for from a skill capacity standpoint. It's people that use it to leverage the skills that they already have, not to replace.
Not to replace it. That's awesome, man. Cool. What do you think, dude?
This is awesome. This is awesome, man.
I think that's pretty conclusive. It's just fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you for having me on, and thank you for joining my show too. This is fun.
Of course. Before you go though, I want to make sure people know, like, for your podcast, do you have a website or something? Like, I want to make sure people know where to go to find you.
Yeah, all of our videos are hosted on our YouTube. I'll drop the links in my, obviously, if people are listening to it on my platform, they're probably already there. But Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, it's all over. That's the best place to find me and communicate to me about anything. Cool. If you're hiring for resources, if you're looking for a new job, if you're looking for some critical advice on your AI generated resume, and for me to tell you that write it yourself, like drop me a message and I'm happy to tell you.
I love it. Do you have,
and how about yourself?
Oh yeah, it's gtmaiacademy.com and very soon gtmaipodcast.com. But either one,
and I'm sure that's all linked below.
Thank you. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Anybody wants to talk to me, as long as you don't pitch at me, I'll talk to you. So just don't pitch me. I immediately take you off. I'm like, nope, not doing it.
I love it.
Random question for you, a genuine question before you go. Like, who do you find is the best people you like to work with in your function? Is it in marketing or is it VP level? Who's usually the best that if they want to reach out to you for talking to you?
From a podcast perspective, or
more from just your search function? Anybody in go-to-market, any role, any position, any height?
Anyone in go-to-market and a senior executive position from director to C-level, or even high-level individual contributors that are aspiring leaders, right? There's a place for everyone, and that's stuff we touch.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure, because there's a lot of people who listen. I know your audience knows you, but my audience doesn't. So I want to make sure they know, if they're listening, who could reach out to you. So I'll link your stuff as well. But I just want to say thanks, man. This was fun. Like we should do it again sometime.
I think so. This was a blast. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you. Thank you guys. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.